welcome to World Youth Day Central. I'm Pedro Guevara Mann.
And I'm Father Chris Valka. It's the final day of World Youth Day, the much-anticipated concluding Mass with the Holy Father. And we'd like to welcome all those who are joining us through XT3 in Australia.
And also our listeners who are joining us through the Catholic channel on Sirius XM. And of course, those who are listening to us or watching at WYDCentral.org and on Salt and Light Television. It was quite the evening last night.
It was.
And pilgrims have been, a lot of them stayed overnight at Cuatro Vientos, which is the tradition for World Youth Day. The Holy Father will be arriving at the site very shortly to begin the Mass. And we are going to be going to that very briefly. But first, we want to review the events of last night.
We're also going to be joined by a very special guest in just a moment.
And we're going to find out about a saint who did quite a bit of spiritual exercising. So all that and more is coming right up. Don't go anywhere.
Did you know that St. Ignatius was bedridden after a cannonball injury he suffered during battle? While convalescing, there were no novels on chivalry, which he loved to read. So instead, St. Ignatius read a book on the lives of the saints, which inspired his conversion. St. Ignatius of Loyola, pray for us.
And it was quite the dramatic events that we had last night. And to help us flesh out a little bit of what happened, we're joined now by someone who actually was there, someone who's very familiar to many of our viewers and to our listeners, our own executive producer and CEO, Father Tom Rosica. Welcome to World Youth Day Central.
Good morning. I should say morning.
Okay, so did you sleep is the first question.
I didn't sleep.
Quite the vigil we had last night.
It was a unique experience. It certainly situated our World Youth Day here in Madrid in the context of our World Youth Day in Toronto and also the Eucharistic Congress in Quebec.
Yes.
Because all three were blessed by storms.
I know.
We were wondering if you were having any flashbacks of earlier
we had more than flashbacks. Especially I was right there in the front watching all of this unfold. And it was frightening. There's no question at all. First of all, we should give some statistics. I just received from the Spanish police that the newspapers are speaking this morning of a crowd of 2 million people.
Yeah.
The police are saying it's between 1.4, 1.5 million people in the compound. And we should keep in mind that the compound was meant to hold about 750,000. So this was double the amount of people. And also the reason why the Pope didn't go through the alleys to greet people is because the paths were blocked.
Yeah. Now, is this unusual for a vigil to have so many? Usually we have the largest crowd at the final Mass, but it seems that everybody showed up for the vigil anyway.
Everybody was there, and I think what we were finding out little by little is so many people responded positively to the Pope's invitation that they came to Madrid. And I think at a certain point, perhaps in the registration process, we didn't get a good handle, they didn't get a good handle on the numbers. And so the crowd exploded. And, nevertheless, in the midst of all that chaos and this terrible storm, electrical storm, and lightning in the sky and everything else, what is always impressive is the faith of the people. It's truly extraordinary. They remained there. There was no sense of panic. People knelt down and prayed. Where I was sitting, everybody fell to their knees right away with a rosary in their hands. It's always it's a very impressive moment.
Watching it on television, that's exactly what we saw. I mean, the rain, it seemed to come out of nowhere, but then when it stopped and everybody went to adoration, it was incredible.
It was quite remarkable.
It was
really
incredible.
And it was amazing that really the rain held off for the adoration period and then started back up again, as far as we could tell from where we were watching. And it was, the pilgrims at that point were silent. If anybody missed that part, I mean, it was remarkable silence for extended amounts of time
if you see
while they contemplated themselves in prayer.
Sorry, some of the images that we're watching right now, the Holy Father lost his zucchero, and he had some words for the pilgrims. His hair's in a little bit of disarray, and he had to cut his homily short. So let's have a listen.
Gracias por esa alegría y resistencia.
It's interesting. He added those words. They're not in the text that we had before us. Thanks for your resistance tonight.
Vuestra fuerza es mayor que la lluvia. Gracias.
Your faith is much stronger than the rain. And those weren't in the official text either. So he really tapped into what was happening before him.
El Señor con la lluvia nos manda muchas bendiciones.
With the rain, the Lord is sending us many
With this
blessings.
deluge, the Lord is sending us many blessings.
Yeah, and that's again. I wasn't there, but Father Tom, you can tell us what it was like to be there. But watching it on television, that's what we saw. That these pilgrims were. It was almost like they were being challenged to be firm in the faith, like the house built on rock, and maybe pieces of the stage were flying off, but the pilgrims didn't seem to be moved.
For those of you watching this in Canada, I mean, how can you not think of that terrifying morning of July the 28th, 2002, when a storm far worse than this one actually hit? And
It was, yeah.
It was the unforgettable night of my life, that night when we knew that the storm was coming. Met with all the police chiefs and all the meteorologists of Canada. I never thought I'd meet such a crowd like that. They decided that we should evacuate the field of Downsview Park.
Yes.
It was a remarkable thing, and I remember I resisted. I said, I don't think we can do that. We can't send them all to Yorkdale Mall. And the behavior of the young people that night and the behavior last night
Was
reflects
remarkable.
something about the Catholic culture that's been engendered with these World Youth Days.
Now we're seeing images right now of the Custodia de Arfe, which is the monstrance of Arfe. It's the largest monstrance in the world, measures just under 3 meters, and it was the monstrance that was used for adoration
It's
last
from the
night.
cathedral in Toledo, no?
It's from
Yes.
the cathedral in Toledo. Again, very striking, very Spanish, a theme that we've seen throughout the week.
That's right.
Um,
And we had a chance. Even some of our own Salt and Light crew was there, and we've heard from them, and they had said, that really the attitude and the demeanor of the pilgrims was, they were relatively unfazed by the storm, and were really able to enter into the vigil moments.
Yeah, and we can see right now, if our viewers can see, it's everybody's on their knees, everybody's silent, as far as the cameras can see. And to have 1.5 or 2 million young people holding 3-5 minutes of complete silence in adoration is a miracle.
But especially with such numbers around them, yes.
Yeah, for me this was quite moving. One of the things that was, I think, because we were adjusting as we went, and the Holy Father had to cut his homily short because of the rain, his papers got wet. Logistically, Father Tom, and you've been on the inside with a lot of these events, how difficult it is to shift gears in the middle of such a celebration and make adjustments and still, I mean, it still flowed fairly.
It flowed fairly well. I mean, it's always because you have people that are very far apart from where the action's happening. So the choir would have been a quarter of a mile away, and the bishops were certainly very far away, although they weren't the principal actors in the ceremony. So a lot of this is done by radio hookup, and there's a central command, and there's a director, and there's a producer of the ceremony.
Yeah.
So for the most part, it went okay. When the electricity went down at one point,
Oh, so it did.
the sound system failed and everything went down on the stage. The lights were there, but all of the sound failed.
Right.
So there was a long pause. Some people around me thought that this was a very beautiful meditation. It was called papal anxiety, I think.
Yes.
And I saw the scrambling that was going on
Well,
to try to put that back. The lightning hit the electricity.
We wondered if they were considering canceling.
There was a moment backstage that was a little bit tense.
And then when we saw the Holy Father leave the stage, we thought,
Yeah.
is he leaving or is he just getting his cope? And thankfully he was just preparing for adoration.
Well, and there were some adjustments that were having to be made
Yeah.
to the stage and to the script clearly as well.
Pope Benedict is such a humble man, and for him, the last person he's worried about is himself and any kind of bother. He's always expressing, oh, I'm so sorry you have to go through that. I'm so sorry they have to do this.
Right.
And constantly thanking people. Those of us who have been up close with him, constantly, excuse me, I don't mean to be a bother. And even when he came off, I was there when he got into the car, and apologizing and thanking the policemen and thanking the other people who were helping him for the disturbance that this caused.
Right.
It was Mother Nature that caused the disturbance. It was not
Right.
the Pope.
Now, I'm getting word that the Holy Father is either en route or just arriving at Cuatro Vientos in the Pope Mobile. He is expected to drive through the crowds. There was a little concern last night that the roadways, with all the chaos of the rain, had disappeared because pilgrims moved. But hopefully the Holy Father should be able to drive around, and we're going to be going to that very, very shortly, just after this brief break.
Imitate St. Ignatius of Loyola and do everything for the greater glory of God, and remain faithful to the Holy Father. St. Ignatius of Loyola, pray for us.
As we continue to reflect on the vigil from last night, I know many of the newspapers, and when I finally got back to where I was staying, I had a chance to be able to turn on the television, and there was certainly, this did capture the attention of the worldwide media in a very quick amount of time.
Yes.
And they talked about the storm, and they talked about the fact that the homily was cut short, but they also did make a mention of, this. They captured the themes themselves. They talked about how these pilgrims were firm in their faith, withstanding the heat earlier, and then later on the rain. And so even for the media, international media, really, this was a reflection of the faith that we've been seeing here all week long.
Well, I think for a lot of people, it was a miracle. I mean, we prayed. The pilgrims were running out of water. We prayed for water. They got their water, and then they were asked to pray that the water would stop.
Here's the Pope arriving at the site now. It's kind of interesting that today's gospel, the gospel for this Sunday, is the gospel of Caesarea Philippi. Jesus takes the disciples there and asks for a profession of faith. I couldn't help but think, as I was watching all this chaos last night and everything, this is the place, this is the Caesarea Philippi today, where people are brought to make a profession of faith. See, we often think that the profession of faith, that the willingness to give witness, is done in a nice, pastoral, quiet, reflective sense. It's in a retreat house. Caesarea Philippi in the time of Jesus was a pretty wild place. It was up in northern Israel at the foot of Mount Hermon. There was a cult going on up there to a pagan god named Pan. And Jesus takes them there, and in the midst of this, against the backdrop of all this noise and chaos, which is the modern world, Jesus asks them to make a profession of faith. When I think back over the histories of World Youth Day, you think of the modern-day Caesarea Philippi. They have other names. Cherry Creek State Park in Colorado, Manila in that massive scene that we saw, and then Toronto Downsview Park, Marienfeld in Germany, and at a race course of all places in Australia. And it's kind of symbolic, I think, of where we're asked to make a profession of faith today. It's not going to be in those nice, quiet, bucolic, pastoral places, but in the places that are filled with contrasts.
And that's actually been something we've been talking about all week long, that the Holy Father has really been telling all of the pilgrims and all of those who are watching that they need to be able to go out and witness, not to stay within the confines of our usual comfort zones, but actually to go out. And that message was actually quite explicit when he addressed the seminarians just yesterday.
For many of the kids there who endured a storm last night, and the several 100,000 who have been excluded from the site because there's no room, this for them is the World Youth Day, just to catch a glimpse of him. It's interesting, when young people see this, they're letting Peter's shadow fall on them. They see in this person not just a rock star, some kind of a superstar like the world upholds for us, but this is the successor of Peter. This is our link back to the beginning, to the source. Keep in mind that this whole area of the Air Force Base is a very dry and dusty place. I came home last night covered with sand.
That's what we heard from some of our friends who were there last night when they got back, who said that even after all that rain, the ground was not wet.
No.
Because it's so dry.
The little time that I sat last night before I had to move to take care of some of our Canadian groups, I looked next, 2 seats down from me was the Mexican actor Eduardo Verástegui, dressed in shorts and a t-shirt, and swarmed by a mob of young girls came jumping over seats to catch him, and all of a sudden I caught sight of him. He, of course, is the actor from the movie Bella, and he's been on our studio and been on Salt and Light programs. And then just 4 seats down, the Prior of Taizé, and a lot of our friends that took part in World Youth Day, and 3 seats down from them, the members of the royal family. Not the prince, of course, sat up on stage with his wife, the princess, but all these young people from the royal family were there, dressed in t-shirts and whatever, and I didn't know who they were. And one of the young girls, the volunteer, she said, "Es la familia real." I said, "Ah, bienvenido."
Yeah. Now, just a note for anyone that might be joining us at this time, you're listening to the World Youth Day Central coverage, Salt and Light television coverage of the final Mass of World Youth Day. If you're joining us through XT3 in Australia, or on the Catholic channel on Sirius XM, or on our own website, WYDcentral.org, or on our digital cable network, Salt and Light Television, we welcome you. If you're just joining right now, the site of the closing Mass is the same site as the vigil last night. It's an Air Force base, Cuatro Vientos, a very large airfield. We had been told originally that it should accommodate 2 million people, but that clearly is not the case.
And I know this morning, as I made my way here on the subway, it was actually quite full, especially for an early Sunday morning, and there were definitely people, not necessarily pilgrims, but older people who were trying to go to the Mass as well. And Father Tom, you can probably confirm, but I do believe they've opened up some overflow sites at this point.
What they've done is last night they announced through the service that because the site was full, they told anyone who came on Sunday morning would not be allowed in, and they opened up a big stadium in downtown Madrid.
Right.
And there's a Mass taking place there. Another thing we should be aware of is that the Cardinal, like Cardinal Ambrosic did in Toronto, asked that Masses be suppressed in the parishes on this Sunday to enable many people of Madrid to go.
Many priests.
And many priests as well. And also that most of Madrid is away on holidays right now. So I think Madrid is a desert city at the present moment. Those who are in the stadium will have Mass. And I know many groups that were not allowed in. Some of our Canadian groups, for example, the group from Toronto, the group from Ottawa, which were not allowed into the site because of the overcrowding, are gathering in their hotel with Bishop McGrattan. Bishop Bill McGrattan, who's the Auxiliary Bishop of Toronto, chose not to attend the Mass this morning at the site so he can celebrate with the hundreds of people from Toronto and Madrid. So I assure the parents of Toronto and Madrid, your kids will be at Mass this morning. It's just a quieter venue. This is the King of Spain and Queen Sophie and the members of the royal family just arriving at the site. And last night, the Prince of Asturias and his wife were also there with all of their entourage.
The royal family seems to have a very good relationship with Pope Benedict. Quite friendly. I know that the King Felipe is quite fluent in German and Italian. So I'm sure that they would have had some candid moments, especially during their private meeting on Friday.
King Juan Carlos.
Yes, Felipe is his son, Prince Felipe.
Prior to arriving at the site last night, I think that you showed this, Pedro, where we had the Holy Father stop at a center for physically and mentally handicapped run by the Brothers of St. John of God. And that was a particularly moving visit. He did the same thing in Sydney. Prior to arriving at the Randwick race course, he stopped at a nursing home run by the Little Sisters of the Poor. And last night was very beautiful because of the young man that got up and addressed the Pope. He was born deaf, talked about being near death before, when he was a young boy, and there was dead silence because they flashed this on the big screens. And people listened to that testimony. Thank God they had that testimony to listen to before the storm happened.
Yeah, we were watching and remembering some of the moments with the L'Arche communities in Toronto and in Sydney as well. And it seems that for Pope Benedict, those are important moments. He makes a point of meeting with those who are marginalized, those who are...
This cry that they're saying, Esta es la juventud del Papa, this is the youth of the Pope, and this was the chant that went through the streets of Madrid all week. Of course, led by the Spaniards, the Spanish-speaking young people. We remember when Pope John Paul was alive, it's the Spaniards who won the prize. Juan Pablo II te quiere todo el mundo. And so that's changed now into Esta es la juventud del Papa. The Spaniards are pretty good at animating a crowd. Look at the dust and the heat. It's been about 100 degrees every day this past week. It goes down at night. It gets very cool. It's about 90. So we've been pretty fortunate. Esta es la juventud del Papa.
We saw him just a few minutes ago, actually, greet another one of the very young children in the audience. He's done that throughout every time we've watched him in these motorcades. He's made a point to be able to stop and greet some of the very youngest in the audience.
Now, Father Tom, this is the closing Mass that we're leading up to. It is the source and summit of our Christian life, the climax, so to speak, of the world these days. Is there anything special that we're to expect for this closing Mass?
It's a regular Sunday Mass. It'll follow the Sunday readings. The Gospel, the homily will be on the Gospel of Jesus taking Peter and the apostles up to Caesarea Philippi and eliciting that profession of faith. There'll be young people involved in the liturgies, and of course at the end of the liturgy will be the Angelus address, normally given in Rome at Castel Gandolfo at this time of year. And it's during the Angelus that the Holy Father will announce the venue. Actually, the venue has been announced around the world. It is Rio de Janeiro, and the Pope will confirm that now, give the papal seal of approval, and of course the Brazilians will go wild for about 3 minutes in the crowd.